Let's begin from Ois Beis. Over here on the page, line 11. Yes, Lakasher Zeh Karogel. We should connect it. We can connect it as usual in Parshas HaShavua, but the Parsha of the week. Shetchilasa, that the beginning of the Parsha begins Kiseitel Machamav Gomer. When you will go out to war, etc. This it's explained in the previous Fabrengen, the exact language that it says when you will go out to war. Why does it say when you will go out to war, which means like not when, but if which indicates that's a possibility. Maybe yes, maybe not. That indication is that the matter is a doubt, if you will go out to war. If not, why is that so? So in the previous Abrengen that Rebbe spoke, a Jew on his own, from his essential level as he is, and Neshama has no connection with the whole ideas of war. War and a Jew have no business with each other. Yehudi Mekabel is called in Yonov Ba'ifin Shal Menucha V'Simcha. Yid receives all of his matters in a way of rest and joy, in a glatten oif, in a smooth way, a ruiken oif, in a calm way, and a freilichen oif, in a joyous manner. Add to such a degree Metach Simcha Shal Amaylam Chom Didvag Bola, out of joy that's beyond all measure and boundary. How come? Mikivan Shemekabel Kol in Yonim, since the Yid receives all of his matters from his hand, Hashem's hand, that is full and open and holy and broad. And the Rebbe goes into more depth, bring a little bit Kabbalah over here. We're not going to go into deep Kabbalah things. What does it mean, Milchama? What war are we referring to? It indicates also on the constriction and concealments of Hashem's godliness and light and revelation. Because the idea of tzimtzum, constriction, that Hashem constricts himself and covers himself and hides himself, is as if a war, metaphorically speaking, with the thing that's being concealed. In other words, it's like a war against Hashem in its most subtle form. That's what it means that a Yid is beyond all matters of war. Higher than all types of matters of a measure and a boundary. In other words, that ordinarily he would be under the constraints of the tzimtzum, but he is not. Including also the idea of measures and boundaries of tzimtzum. Because the entire being of a Yid is the very being of Hashem himself, where Hashem is higher than constrictions. And because I don't want to mix too much Kabbalah over here, which is going to be the next few lines, we're going to skip over to line 26, the next paragraph. Since a Yid is beyond tzimtzum, any type of level of constriction and concealment of Hashem, so how much more so she Yehudi ulamayla mekol inyan shal yitzia teitzim tiyutzei. A Yid is beyond any type of exiting. That's kim tzeitzil macham. You have to go out to war. A Yid going out, he is essentially connected with the innermost level of Hashem. That a Yid is beyond going out of that bond, of that connection that a Yid has with the very being of Hashem. And ubi of a knisa lo'olam, a Yid on his own is beyond coming and entering the world. Though the world is Hashem's world, it's not Hashem himself. So in truth, because of a Yid's bond with Hashem is so powerful, he's beyond even going out into the world, into the level that is something that's called outside, even though it's Hashem's world. So he goes on line 29. The reason why a Yid goes out of his being, that was before the Tzimtzum, and he descends and comes to this low world, is it's to be able to fulfill the intention and the purpose and the goal that you shall capture its captives, which Chassidus explains about elevating sparks of godliness that are trapped in Klippa. You're going to skip over some of the other technical things that the Rebbe goes on over there, connecting with the parsha, with the two children, the hated child and the loved child, etc. Let's skip over to, on the next page, line 3, Ois Dalet. We can add to this, since a Yid on his own is beyond every measure and boundary, despite the fact that he's beyond measure and boundary, he leaves his true being that's beyond any type of limitation. He comes down to a world that's measured and has a boundary. Because he's really above it, all matters that are beyond measure and boundary, it comes down in the measured aspects and the boundaries of the person himself. That through this he will be capable of receiving it, even though the way he is now, he is limited, but that limitation does not interfere, because he came down from a place beyond limitation, that he should be able to receive all the brachas of Hashem beyond limitation. This means it remains in it the power and full force in these brachas that are beyond measure and boundary. Alongside with this, it's drawn down and comes down into the vessels of the person. And the Rebbe says, he said before the expression Yodei Hamlei Apsuchak Doish Varachava. So the Rebbe has a very interesting take on this expression. This is also the exact language used concerning your hand that is full and that is open and that is holy and that is broad. Why do we have this type of expression of invention that we say all these 4 types of descriptions? So we have to understand it's coming from the highest, most level, the infinite level. It's coming from your hand, Hashem's hand himself. When we're talking about Hashem's anything, it's beyond any type of measure and boundary. And afterwards, they draw down the level of Yodcha into Hamleya, which is one thing, Hapsucha, the open ones, the second thing, Hagdoisha, the holy one, Varachava, the broad one. Hainu, this means all of a sudden, your hand, that's beyond measure and boundary, Hashem's hand, is now has descriptions. And the descriptions, full, open, holy, and broad, have specifically 4. There are 4 descriptions. They indicate the 4 letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's an idea of measure and boundary. So we see again this coalescing and meshing of that which is beyond measure, Yodcha, your hand, beyond everything, into the boundaries of the definitions and the descriptions of Amlei Apsuchak Doish Varachava. And that's what he says, the Rebbe goes on, line 12, this is also that the hashpah to the Yidden comes in measures and boundary involving the number 4. Skip the parentheses. Both concerning the Yidden in general, that they find themselves in the 4 corners of the earth. Kimudgish, Be'inyan Kibbutz Goliath, like it's emphasizing the term that when Moshiach comes, there's going to be Kibbutz Goliath, the gathering of the exiles. In Welchem Mekochzich, the Rebbe says this is what we are very much passionate about now. This is what we're all emphasizing and involved in now. Kapseinu Yachad Me Arba Kamfas, we say in davening, collect us together from the four corners of the earth. Asher im hi, though it's distant one from another. So in other words, it's very far, it's very big, the four ends of the earth. It's still a null in a way of measure and boundary. So therefore, since it's in a way of measure and boundary, so we have, again, the infinite coming into the finite, which is the entire message he's saying over here as well. Let's skip over to Ois Hey, Omnam, line 20. Omnam Tachlis HaKavanahi, even though we're the whole time talking about beyond limitations, coming down into the limitations of this world and of the Yid, still in all the ultimate purpose is Sheizbatlu Kol Einyanim Shomadidav Agbola. All matters of measure and boundary should cease. Including and specifically this measure and boundary that Yidden find themselves in Golus, that has to be nullified. Ubefrat shegam kasher Yehudi nimtza begolus harev zu beoifen shesoyne hat feintes a Golus. When a Yid finds himself in Golus, it's in a way that he hates the exile. Skip the parentheses. Ki biyodei shezau inshal Geulah. No, because he knowing that this is an idea of exile. Why is the word Geulah a Golus? Because it's missing the revelation of the letter Aleph. If you were to insert a letter Aleph in the word Geulah, as we've spoken about many times, it would be Geulah, it would be redemption. The reason why we are in Geulah is because there's lacking the revelation of the letter Aleph, which the letter Aleph goes on the ruler of the world, on the boss of the world. He's experiencing a state where Hashem is not revealed. Therefore, nasa etzli regish shel sinah la'gola. So by Yid becomes a feeling of a hate for exile. Sinah amitis v'sinah amuka, a true hate and a deep hate, an emesis sinah, an atifas sinah. Line 26. V'oid zois. Like the expression of the pasuk is Asher Sonei Havaya Lekecha. It's not just that the Jew hates Golus, but like we had in last week's parsha, also the expression that Hashem your God hates. Sha'Kadosh Baruch Hu soines hagolus oid yoyser b'macha b'nei Yisrael soines hagolus. Hashem hates the Golus even more than what the Yidden hate the Golus. Shekain HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yodei As Kol Einyanim Shechaselu B'nei Yisrael Be'esi Yosim Begolus. Hashem knows all those matters that are lacking for the Yidden while they are in Golus. Oid Yoser M'mashahem Atzvam Yodim Masha Nechsa Lahem. Even more so than what the Yidden themselves know what they're missing. We say in davening, B'rachamecha Harabim Racham Aleinu. In your great mercy, have compassion upon us. So Chassidus always explains why it says "B'rachamecha harabim," in your great mercy, because we don't appreciate the great Rachmanus it is on us, because we cannot know how much we are lacking. Only Hashem truly knows what we are lacking. So therefore, as much as we are lacking in Golus, and because of that we hate the Golus, Hashem knows even more so what we're lacking in Golus, and therefore hates the Golus so much more. So he's saying, what do you mean? After listening to all the Sichas of the Rebbe about how terrible Golus is, I know how terrible Golus is, and I have good enough reason to hate the Golus. He says in the middle of line 28, 3 lines in the bottom, though they already explained to every single Yid in the way that Rebbe is referring to himself, I already explained to everyone That the state and situation of the Geulah is the opposite of every purpose and the opposite of all matters. Mikol Makom, still in all. Since a Yid is after all a soul embedded in a physical body. All explanations are only in a measured way, in a way of a boundary. There still remains the infinite aspect of negating Geulah, that they were not successful. We still did not have the opportunity. We did not manage to explain it. In other words, a person is limited. So the unlimited aspect of how terrible Geulah is, a limited mind cannot handle yet. So therefore, but rather, since a Yid knows, the Pashtus, in a simply, it's such an existence that the Eibishter hates it. This is sufficient for him also that he should hate, that the Yid should hate the Geulah, because if the Eibishter hates it, what else do I need? You don't need to explain me what and when and why, and that's it. In other places that ever brings the Maimer Chazal that there's different things that the Eibishter regrets having created them, and one of them is Geulah. So the second paragraph on the page, line 3, because of a Yid's hatred for Geulah, he doesn't need any other explanation to try to do whatever is necessary to get out of Geulah. But take it from Miyad, and immediately comes about Munach Kuloi Ba'avoida Lasis Megeulah Geulah, and he's totally immersed in the avoida of transforming the exile into redemption. And how is that done? One letter, we said before, by adding one single letter, the letter Aleph. And by adding the letter Aleph, which refers to Hashem, that changes everything. This one and only letter, this transforms and changes the exile into redemption. And in redemption itself, an even higher state and situation, in one ascent after another ascent, like the Rebbe spoke about many times. Take from Miyad, third paragraph on the page, this happens immediately. Hashem did not delay them even on eye blink. Out of jumping and skipping over and over all matters of the entire chain order of descent, he's going beyond it. Like it says, that he's skipping over the mountains and jumping over the hills. And we've spoken about this before, the difference between skipping and jumping, as it's known. There's the skipping with one foot, and there's the idea of jumping in with two legs, with 2 feet. And surely Hashem makes it. By each and every one of us shall be a state and situation of jumping with 2 feet. Should take it from Miyad Mamish that immediately we're jumping into a state and situation of redemption. And even higher to the state and situation of his singleness, Hashem's onlyness. To a state and situation even higher than that, where he's the only one of the world. We jump so high, we are mekapet so high, that we're even higher than, we reach a level that's higher than any type of description. The Rebbe says a bracha keitil lanu, so it should be for us biyachadim kolechad v'echad Yisrael v'klal Yisrael, along which each individual yid and the whole klal Yisrael. Ubefrat eila hanimtzayim kan, especially those that find themselves here. The Rebbe was addressing the crowd in 770. B'bayishim megadlim by ma'asim tovim, bayishim megadlim by Torah, bayishim megadlim by tefillah, a house which is somewhere where good deeds grow and Torah grows in it and davening grows in it. These are the 4 cubits in which we find ourselves at present when the Rebbe was saying the Sicha, and especially Shemedalad Amas Elu, from these 4 cubits, Nasa Bayis Rochov Sheyesh Bekama V'Kama Pam Dal Damas. It becomes a broad house that has in it many times, multiple times 4 cubits. V'Yisrachiv Oid Yoser, it will broaden even more so. Al Derech Shemetzinu Menegel Yerushalayim Shalosad Lavit Yisrachiv L'Maylam Didvag Bolo, similar to what we find concerning Yerushalayim of the future time, that will broaden beyond measure and boundary. This understood. Should the Gemasa year b'chol beis knesses, b'chol beis medrash, or b'chol beis ma'asim tovim, that from the Yerushalayim it's understood concerning every shul and every yeshiva and every place where it was a gathering for good deeds, that they will grow beyond measure and boundary. In addition to this, like it's mentioned beforehand, that the Rebbe brought that Moshiach is standing on the roof of the Beis Hamikdash and proclaiming that Anovim Higiaz Man Geulah, humble ones, the time of your Geulah has come. And the Rebbe says Moshiach represents Klal Yisrael, so that means every Yid is standing. That every single Yid is already standing on the roof of the Beis Hamikdash. How much more so on the roof of the homes that are similar to Beis Hamikdash? In other words, the shul, the yeshiva, and so on. He proclaims and lets know. The Yid and Mashiach proclaims, let know. Shakadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Hashem says, Anovim higiaz man gulaschem, humble ones, the time of your redemption arrived. It already arrived. In other words, in past tense. It's not just it will arrive. The Yisraelim is even more so, like it says in Kudei the word lahagia in a different context. And he explains in the parentheses, to touch in Yiddish. In other words, it's not just higias man gulaskum, that the time of your redemption has arrived, but you're actually touching the time of redemption. A type of touch that through it we unite with the matter that we are touching it. And the Rebbe says an interesting thing concerning Esther HaMalka when she touched the golden scepter of Achashverosh. So he says in line 21, to note, so too we find concerning the redemption of Purim, we're still considered, the Chazal say, the servants of Achashverosh. The Rebbe says in the positive that the ideas of Purim still apply to us now. The beginning of the redemption began through Esther touching at the head of the scepter of the king, which spiritually we know the king is going on Malkish Aloilam, the king of the world, Achashverosh. And Achashverosh means, hints at the Eibishter as well, that the word Achashverosh is a combination of the word Sha'achris V'reish Shaloi, the end and the beginning is his. The Eibishter is at the end and the beginning, it's all the same. So we, as represented by Esther HaMalka, touch the head of the scepter of the king. So, and that is just like we are touching the time of the Geulah that's arrived. The Rebbe says, what's the idea of touching the head of the scepter? Line 24, the idea behind this is, so the idea of the king should be something that's absorbed by him. It has to begin just touching the scepter of the king. The scepter of the king also has to do with the quality and the greatness of the king and his beauty. That the king in his beauty your eyes will see. All he's touching is the head of the scepter. So it's only the scepter. He hasn't touched the king. And it's only the head of the scepter. But the way a Yid touches the king Hashem's scepter is the head of the scepter. He ba'ofen shenivla lagamri b'yoysei neshama beguf b'roish hasharvit. The malka shaloyim shachris v'reish shaloi. A Yid touches the scepter of the king that becomes totally absorbed while still being a neshama in a body. In the head of the scepter of the king of the world, that the end and the beginning is his. Shu inyan shchibur ha'hofchim the achres v'reishis. What's the idea? That he's joining two opposites. The end and the beginning are two opposites. But by Hashem, it's all kifi sheim loymim tzias b'fnei atzmin kim shaloi. They are not a separate entity, but they are all his. They are Hashem's. Until the end and the beginning, which are two opposites, are all part of the word Achashverosh. That over there, the words Achris and Reishis, end and the beginning, are not there, they're only hinted. And corresponding to this, becomes a state and situation that we are still servants of Achashverosh, but in a positive way. Usually the Chazal say that we are still in Geulah, so really we're still the servants of Achashverosh. The Rebbe emphasizes over here, based on what we're saying about Achris v'reish shaloi, it's going on Hashem, saying that we're still the servants of Achashverosh. It's a positive. Is a call echad ve'echad me'Yisrael echu eved l'misha achretz v'reish shaloi. It's revealed by every single Yid how he is a servant to the one who the end and the beginning is his. Kivin shebetur eved memalus hashlichas b'olam hazeh hatacht. And since as a servant he fulfills the mission that he has in this low world, shenikval pi'agdorim the achretz v'reish mashbein time, that's established according to the different categories and limitations of the end and the beginning and what's in between. So again, it's the same idea, like we said before, that we have the beyond limitation becoming manifest and embedded in those things that are limited. And here the Rebbe connects it with the idea of tzedakah, which the Rebbe would connect very often, these sichas. To speed up even more so the going out of the boundaries and limitations of exile. Immediately we connect it also with giving to tzedakah, to make everyone a representative and a messenger to give tzedakah. And to note, in giving the tzedakah is there is both aspects of the mashpia and the makabel, and therefore we have shezel gamin the chosn mashpia v'kala makabel. There's also the chosn that's the mashpia and the kala is the receiver. Skip over to line 6. So too it's concerning every single yid. That every yid is a kala, bride for Hashem. Beginning from the ring ceremony, the edison, the betrothal, not engagement, but the first stage of the chasna that took place by Matan Torah, until the culmination of the marriage that we have between us and Hashem, which is going to be when Moshiach comes. The Medrash Rabbi Shmoi says that this time during Matan Torah was only the betrothal, the first part of the marriage, where he gives the ring to the kala. But the final aspect, the total marriage, will take place when Mashiach comes. Then the days of Mashiach will be the joining of both matters of Chosn and Kala, Mashpia and Makabel. In such a way that there is no contradiction between the Chosn and Kala, between the Mashpia and the Makabel. Because when Mashiach comes, all opposites will become joined. From all them together becomes one entity and a single entity. The point of unity of Hashem, the way it's in the way of oneness and single, that's higher than the level of one. As he says in the parentheses, that one indicates a composite oneness, whereas Yochid means a complete single entity. Skip the parentheses on line to line 12. Yisedim is even more so. Sharigam Yochid u'in shel darga, even Yochid is a certain level, but we can actually be combined and connected. Atzmusi Musi is Baruch Shil Mailagam B'chinas Yochid. Hashem's very essence that's even higher than Yochid. Skip the parentheses again. And similar to this, also concerning Neshamas of Yidden, even the level of Yechida that's connected with Mashiach. As it's known that Mashiach is the Yechida of the entire world, even Yechida is only the name. It says, Chamisha Shemes Nikrul Neshama. Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chai Yechida. So it's 5 names. So even Yechida is only a name. Like I just quoted the Medrash. Skip the parentheses. As opposed to the Neshama itself, the way it's beyond name. It's beyond all divisions of levels. Even higher than the singleness of Hashem. Since it's connected with Hashem's very essence. So now he's going to bring this in very interestingly to a question about tzedakah and Mashiach's times. It says in line 19, we can add, so too it's concerning tzedakah. One pasuk it says that a poor person will never cease from within the land. There'll always be poor people. Therefore, always there'll be a need to give tzedakah. Because of and another pasuk says it won't be by you anymore, poor people. And how do we fit these two psukim together? According to what it's known, in Mashiach's times itself, there are going to be 2 eras, 2 periods. When Nimtza comes out, in the first era, in the first period of Mashiach, there'll still be a state where there'll be a giver of tzedakah and a receiver of tzedakah. As opposed to the second period. Let's skip over to let's skip over to the next page, line 7. Every person should reveal by themselves the idea of Shema Yisrael, the oneness of Hashem. This was a Sicha said after Maidav. We'll say this again by Kriyashma before going to bed. It's appropriate that saying Kriyashma Shalmita in this day should be in greater intention than the day prior to it. And how much more so I feel the Kavana you said Krishma with Phyllis Arvis, even more intention than the Krishma might have. And then the Rebbe skip the parentheses, Sheisifu Kulam Ba Simcha, all shall add an increase in joy, Ba'ifin Shah Simcha Tiakshurim Sudasanim, Shizawin the Mitzvah Tzedakah, in such a joy that will be connected with meals for poor people. That's the idea of the Mitzvah of Tzedakah. Kvishin Asayim Gamachav Karagl Basis, Kolech and Vechem Mitanim, Kolech Vechem Mikem, Shlech, Litan Tzedakah, like we will conclude now also as usual, in making every single one of us and every single one of you a messenger to give to tzedakah. In addition to this, and this is primary, from the many things that we spoke about, from the much that we spoke about, will come to actuality, and the actions was primary, the action of a true and complete redemption through Mashiach immediately.